Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Everyone, we are going to start the meeting.
Ooh, look at that.
So, good evening, everyone, to the Plan Commission meeting for June 17, 2025. The first thing is to call to the order to the meeting, and we have quorum. Second is approval of the minutes, so I need someone to move the approval.
I move approval.
Second.
Any question, comments? Here none. All of you saying yes. All signifying yes. I'm sorry. All of you in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. So next we move to number 3. Is public appearance for non-agenda items. We don't have anyone on the room online for non-agenda items. Okay. So next we move to the agenda review. Any question, comments about the agenda review? Here none. We move to number 5, agenda items. So we have now, we are going to do the presentation from the 2 neighborhood plans. We have the consultant and city staff. They're going to start with the process. And after they finish with each of the neighborhood plans, we are going to open the public hearing. And everyone who wishes to speak will have 3 minutes to speak on this public hearing. Okay? So, Brad.
Yep, thanks for the reminder. All right, so it's been a long road to get here, but we are past the steering committee section of both of the neighborhood plans. So I'm just going to quick overview what this presentation, what the presentation agenda for the evening is, and then go into some of the process that applies to both plans and some of the summaries, and then I'll turn it over to Steve. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with some the process and overview of the process of the plan development. Overview of the public engagement and what we heard from that. We'll talk about and this will be for each plan, we'll talk about the preferred concept and the land use, the preferred land use development process through each of the plans. Go over the vision and goals, and then we've got strategies and actions listed under each of those as well. Go through the engineering, including the sanitary and water, preliminary design, a traffic analysis, and then for Greenfield specifically, we'll go through the petition, the neighborhood petition, and the Friends of Wavisa Wetlands letter responses. And following the presentation, each plan will have its own public hearing and commission discussion. So starting off with the plan development elements, this was basically the scope of the project here was to do background research and open house in the beginning, develop the vision, goals, and strategies and actions, and simultaneously work through the land use concept development. So we started with bubble diagrams, very general bubble diagrams, then went to more detailed concepts, and then finally arrived at a preferred concept for each plan. And then kind of simultaneously with the end of that land use concept process, we did preliminary engineering and traffic analysis, which then could play into some changes to the preferred concept, and did plan drafting. And we're at the stage now where there are draft plans approved or recommended for furthering for adoption from each steering committee. Just overview quick, this chart shows the approximate timeline for each of the stages. I'll just overview quick the engagement activities here. We had, at the beginning, online opportunity mapping. We had, and that was map online that we could put, that people were able to put dots on and comments and everything. 2 neighborhood meetings specific to Greenfield, so those were a charrette, an open house type charrette, and then a feedback meeting on land use. So those 2 meetings, we didn't have the same for South Stone or Prairie, but they were extra meetings built into the process for Greenfield. We did an online survey for both plans on the types of development. We had several public open houses and input forums for both plans. Developer focus group to understand kind of the development, the developability of the preferred concepts that came up. Stakeholder interviews, including landowners and operators of the land in both. Steering committee working meetings, plan commission meetings where there were updates, the same with a couple committee of the whole meetings. And then we're at the public hearing, or a public hearing meeting, and then we'll be going in September into the public hearing and adoption meetings. So we also had a city email that we were, an email inbox specific to these that we were monitoring and responding to. So quick on the remaining process, we've got tonight will be, the remaining process is the adoption process. And so tonight we have a presentation on both plans, the public hearing, and then discussion. We're not planning for action tonight. The next kind of date from tonight would be July 10th. That's the comment deadline on the current draft plans. And we've got about a month and a half to process and consider comments. And then we're looking at September 16th for the public hearing and adoption for the Plan Commission, and September 23rd for the Council public hearing and adoption. And just real quick, I'll go through briefly go through the plan document layout. This applies to both plans. This is an image of Greenfield, but it's organized into 4 main chapters and then appendices, and it follows a similar organization as the presentation tonight, but that's tried to keep a fairly simple layout there. So just have that up for reference. And on the engagement on Greenfield, I think what we learned, actually, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you now that we're into the specific plans. So.
Sure. So yeah, we'll go through Greenfield neighborhood plan first, and then South Stoner. Trying to keep this brief, but yet there's a lot to cover. So I'll.
Could you introduce yourself briefly before
I'm sorry,
you start?
yes.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Steve Tremlett. I'm planning team leader with MSA Professional Services. Is that right? So Brad went through all the engagement activities we did through the process. You can't get that all on one slide of the feedback, but we did hear that keep Greenfield green, preference for lower density residential and farming areas, preferences for maintaining the current character of the neighborhood and history of Fitchburg as a farming community, and concerns with current traffic and stormwater management issues. More development will increase these. You'll see when we go through this of the process that has altered the plan over time, reducing some residential densities, add additional open space buffering between existing and new development areas. Preservation of significant open space includes on Greenfield the opportunity of maybe agrihood, which we'll talk about later. New collector roads to limit non-residential traffic on Irish and Sayin. Reducing commercial and business areas, limiting them to east of the tracks, and then limiting interventions with the existing neighborhood. So talk briefly about vision, goals, and strategies. So the statement that was created for the vision of the neighborhood is Greenfield neighborhood will balance residential and economic growth while preserving the local character and quality of life of its current and future residents. We broke out the goals really into 5 categories: housing, mobility, economy, quality of life, and sustainability. So I'm going to hit on the goal or goals and one strategy, but the other ones are listed here. For housing, it was additional housing options will be provided in the neighborhood, but will be strategically placed, designed, and buffered to be compatible with the existing Greenfield residents. There are 4 strategies, but actually through that process, number 3 was added, which is new development adjacent to the existing established Greenfield neighborhood should include mitigation techniques to maintain the general local character of this neighborhood. You'll see the image on there is showing a 200 buffer from the established neighborhood. That was part of a statement in the petition of interest from the neighborhood. And so that was included. Economy goal, employment and goods and services will be strategically located and connected to reduce the dependency on longer vehicle travel and to provide local and convenient options near the neighborhood. There are 2 strategies. One I'll note is promoting flexible land uses east of the tracks that allow for either gentle increases in residential density or business park to respond to market needs and landowner interests. So this flexibility, you'll see it in both neighborhoods where you see the hatching, and this is east of the tracks where the purple is business park, which is the hatching you see, or it could be medium high density, which is more of that tannish color. There is one portion north of Collector A that is shown darker, which is high density on that one. And the concern from the steering committee was, how do you decide of not creating an isolated neighborhood? And so each of these strategies have additional statements, and I've added that, and for this conversation that might come up is there's really 2 clusters of this flex area. I have them circled. Whichever use is approved for more than half of that cluster shall result in requiring the remaining of the cluster to match that initial requested use so that you don't have that isolated scenario. So if Flex Cluster 1, which is north of Collector and Irish Lane, if more than 50% of that says was approved for business park for a portion of it, it suggests that the remaining portion should be at least preferred for business park. Mobility goal, support future regional transportation connections that limit impacts of Greenfield local streets as the region continues to grow. Noting number 2, encourage alternative north, south, and east, west collector streets that shift traffic growth away from Sayin and Irish Lane. That, as noted, was a big concern of currently of traffic that's been increasing on those streets, and additional development would increase that further. So you'll see in this plan where we've had that idea of where can we have additional collectors that could relieve this additional development traffic. Mobility has a second goal, which is implement safe, convenient, and attractive streets for everyone regardless of age, ability, or mode of transportation. Strategy 3, encourage proposed streets to connect to existing streets and intersections wherever practical. That's 1 of 5. Quality of life goal, create and maintain open spaces accessible to all residents for recreation and neighborhood character preservation. 4 strategies here. The last one being noted is make intentional multimodal connections between local and regional park and open spaces, especially developing a path through a proposed moraine edge corridor. Sustainability, there's 2 for this one. Create an economically and environmentally sustainable development pattern, protecting existing natural features. There's 4 strategies, noting out number 3, integrate environmental features into the neighborhood as common open spaces for active or passive recreation, public gathering spots, or flood protection and stormwater management. The second sustainability goal is consider the historical significance of the neighborhood, especially opportunities to preserve farm fields and implementation of low-impact development techniques for infrastructure design. 4 strategies here, noting number 1, strategically preserve natural lands and existing farmland that can complement neighboring housing developments. Also included in the plan is some design guidelines. Through the process, it was by the steering committee noted that these guidelines should be for all developments of consideration. I'm just going to hit on some of the topics, but not break down into what those all outline, but we do hit on eco-sustainable design, site planning, signage and lighting, architecture and design, parking, screening, and landscaping, and in Greenfield, agri-hood. And I guess I'll just hit on that one because that's a unique scenario, noting that if you've heard of conservation subdivisions where you're protecting open space, and this one you're protecting the idea of some farming operation, or it could be community gardens, but generally 60 to 70% is preserved for open space, farmland, includes trails, and then the remaining 30 is clustering of residential development. Another one to be included here of consideration is called compatibility guidelines. So where you have single-family duplex townhomes of smaller size, calling those low-intensity uses. So if those are next to more intensive uses, the intensive use should have additional considerations of design to bring it down in character and compatibility with the low-intensity use. And so noting developments with multiple buildings, locate buildings with the least intensive character nearest or abutting those low-intensive developments. Buildings, this is kind of a suggestion of like, if you look across the street and it's single-family homes and they're each 60 feet wide on average, suggests that you would have some alterations in the building plane and in the building height in that same amount of interval. So you're kind of getting that, you're breaking down a bigger building to match more of what is across the street or behind it. So preferred concept and future land use, just going through a little bit of the scenario planning we went to. We started with, like, as Brad mentioned, bubble diagrams. We had 3. Through that process, there was some interest in A, preferred really the B, but that was morphed over time. We'll talk about that. And less so of C, where there was more intensive development. April 24, we had a neighborhood meeting. You'll see that. So we took the bubble diagram information and created something to share with the neighborhood before it was shared publicly with everyone. So that's what you see there. From that to June and the open house in August, I circled some areas where we took down some of that density west of the tracks, where you see darker brown, which is high density, down to medium high density. Took commercial down at Cyene and Irish, where you see the red, that's commercial. But if you see the later version, it takes it to residential. And then there was additional commercial then pushed east of the tracks at that time. So that was June through August when we presented it as an open house. Then we got to a preferred concept, which you see here, of further reduction of the density west of the tracks. That orange is medium density, so it went from medium high down to medium. And then east of the tracks, you see that we talked about a little bit earlier, business park / residential, and a little bit of commercial at that suggested roundabout. So in this process, this is building towards what a future land use map amendment would be, because currently the comp plan has this as just existing land uses in a FUDA, a future development area. This is defining what that future land use will be, but also noting some design themes that came out of the preferred concept. So you see here discussing the idea of moraine edge corridor. Now it did shrink up in this a little bit. There is an overhead power lines, that part of that green you see on that by the collector A, but then there's wetlands and open space. That's all part of that moraine edge corridor consideration. Higher intensity uses east of the tracks, extending Blaney Road all the way down to Burn over time. Again, relieving some of that north-south pressure that would be on Cyene. And so Blaney obviously goes all the way up to Lacey through the development there, Hartung development. Then there are collector A, which is what you see north of Irish. So this road would help to alleviate pressures on Irish Lane over time. It takes the development from Irish Lane east of the tracks and carries it west, and potentially it could extend further west beyond this neighborhood plan. There's also a collector B, which is in the, it goes north-south on the western half. You can see the circle areas that are on that. I can see if I have a pointer. Yep, it does show, sorry. So there's collector B. So again, relieving some of the pressures that would be on Kane internal development there. And we're calling them collectors, meaning when we look at the future land use map, those are the primary roads suggested that when development comes forward, they would have to build their portion of that collector road to ultimately have that through connection when it's all built out. Noted the potential agri-hood is that kind of a light tan here, but notedly there's another flex area we didn't talk about, but it could just be the lower density residential, which is all that yellow you see. There's potential of multi-use paths. You see the red dash lines throughout. Those are potential multi-use off-road. Do show connections to East Hill or West Hill. May not be both built, but noting that's a connection through on the northern portion of this neighborhood, with only one primary road that runs into the established neighborhood, which is Old Indian, that would connect over to Collector B. As presented, it doesn't connect all the way over to Kane, so there is some reduction in traffic flow that could happen if this road would not, Old Indian would not connect all the way to Kane. But just showing a little bit of connectivity through the neighborhood there. And we worked through the process of describing and walking through the idea of an interchange. It has been discussed with staff that there's maybe interest here of that separation between the two interchanges that exist now, and how that may impact uses. We ultimately landed on that it likely is in that egg-shape area, if there is one, but it's not a firm directive of this plan to say it alters what we're presenting here is the preferred concept or the future land use map. But it does have an action item to have a greater regional transportation study done to determine if an interchange makes sense, does it connect to MM and M? And so that's kind of studied further down the road. Just want to show a progression of where these uses have gone through the process. The ones that are question marks are because they're that flex zone, so it may not be in that use. But generally, you're seeing a reduction or staying about the same. Business park, commercial, neighborhood mixed use has dropped. High density residential could potentially drop further. See increases in lower density residential, some reduction in agri-hood, greater open space through the process. So the future land use map, so you can see here, those collector roads we talked about are shown on the future land use map because that is requested that the exact placements of those roads as it goes through the neighborhood could alter, but you're connecting A to B. So where it connects to the major roads is a preferred location where they would connect. Well, the engineering, we'll start actually with traffic. So this one was more of looking also, is there an interchange or is there not an interchange of just looking at trip distribution. So notably, Irish Lane is shown west of the tracks to be the same in both scenarios, but that's partially also that collector A to the north that we showed. If I back up, that's one reason we described this collector A as necessary with the development is it's taking 35 to 40% of those new trips on that road versus impacting Irish Lane. Also notably, the difference between the no interchange and interchange is Cyene Road north of Irish goes from 35% with no interchange down to 10%, with more of that balance being put onto 14. We also were asked to look at 3 intersections here, and notably that Kane Road and Welland, two-way stop control is adequate, no change. Irish and Kane, assuming Kane Road actually would continue north to Collector A, would continue north and an eastbound right turn lane at the intersection of Irish Lane would be added and would be warranted. Cyene Road and Collector A to the north here, this is the new intersection with a new road. It is assumed traffic control warrants would be met, meaning it would require at full build out either a signal or roundabout to be determined through the process. And we'll move to stormwater. Key points considered. High quality wetlands presented downstream with Swan Creek and Murphy's Creek watersheds. including Wabisa Wetlands State Natural Area. It was noted by residents and public throughout the process of preserving and restoring these wetlands in the neighborhood is necessary for watershed quality and quantity. There was noted localized flooding issues currently noted here. Surface water runoff drains really in 3 directions. I have them numbered to the east. This goes to a closed depression straight east, 3 south to Murphy's Creek, and 1 to the north travels to Swan Creek. So part of this process is also consideration of a future USA amendment, which allows you to extend sanitary sewer. Part of that approval also kind of sets some bars for even stormwater management. And so part of this is described here as matching pre-development rates. Now, typically, pre-development is what it currently is: farm, fields, crops, some woodlands. Because of the conversations we've had in the petition and other things through the process, we determined that we're going to use what it was before cropland. So that means it's even more restrictive of what you're trying to match into is something of conditions that are more natural. Then infiltration volume, maintaining 100% pre-development infiltration volume, meaning it's 100% stay on. So you're managing all the water that would run off within the development. Water quality, retain 80% of total suspended solids compared to no control. And that closed suppression, as mentioned, it's circled in that area, would establish a flood protection elevation equivalent to standing water that would result from back-to-back 100-year runoff events. So all items in red is actually more strenuous than what is typically required by state, county, and the city. Water design, just noting that in general, looking at ways you would be looping the water on Burn Road, on private land between Blaney Road and Sayin. Again, that's for service. If you had to shut off a portion or there's a break, the intention is to have looping where necessary to have 2 routes. There would be a well potentially needed, as noted here in the red circle, at some point. Sanitary design. There is a 2000 Sayin interceptor design study identifying, that's the map you see there, that shows potential areas that could gravity serve to the extension of that green line that runs through here, and the circled an area that's the extent of this interceptor at this point through the Hartung development. Everything south of that line. I lost my pointer. Everything south of the line has not been built. And that'll be a key point to make, is that any service in this area for new development would require that interceptor to be extended. Also noting that through this process, we determined 80 gallons per day was our bar that we set. It has been 100 in the past, but with efficiency of fixtures, that is our new rate. There's been actually a state study that showed even 56 is the average, so this is still conservative. Also looking at areas that are outside the study area for the sizing of the pipes. So you see that center graphic showing additional area that was considered, and the determination how we came to how many units in that area is described there. But that's really just noting, do we have the capacity and what size of pipe that could be extended further west and south if there ever was a FUDA for that area. There's a faint red line, and I apologize, it looks like I might have lost my battery here, but maybe I can do it this way. There we go, sorry. There's a red line here, if you follow there. That's kind of a break line of 2 drainage ways for sanitary. So everything north of that line is being ran to Irish Lane. Everything south of that line would run to Old Indian. And noting that those would be 24-inch pipes based on the capacity needed. Service will be tied to development along the interceptor route, as I mentioned. So if the interceptor is not extended where this orange line is running north, that is a key point of seeing any development happen west of there. New development is required to be on sanitary sewer. but new development does not require a connection from the established neighborhood except along Irish Lane and Old Indian. As noted, that's the gravity serve. That's how they're going to connect. So there has to be those two connection points, but the remaining in the neighborhood is not required to allow for this future development. So based on some of the things I've described, that kind of leads into phasing. We're not putting years on this, but generally speaking, the number one in the northeast would have to come first to get that interceptor extension that's needed to either serve west, where number 2 is, or 3, south of 1. And then ultimately after 3, it really could be served just south of the 4A or the 4B. Either one can be served once you get to 3. Yes. Okay. Okay. I did want to touch on the 2 petitions. And so what I'm outlining here is the response from the actual statements. So there's a Klein study that was done and shared with us that shows restorable wetlands. So we did review that, which we prioritized based on their value to the water resource system. So we focused on wetlands restoration that could be along Swan Creek and Murphy's Creek, and then existing high-quality wetlands in other locations. There are additional ditches that are run around farm fields. Those are like Tier 3 and generally are going to be improved through development, stormwater management in those areas. Low-density development with properly designed and constructed stormwater BMPs will improve current conditions, as I was just alluding to. Will convey it to that ponds to treat it before any of it would trickle out of the neighborhood. Again, we're looking at 100% stay on is a requirement, which is also what was done in McGaw Park neighborhood when it was approved. Conceptual stormwater management plan also uses pre-settlement conditions I mentioned, which is a more rigorous bar you're setting. And noting that 308 acres are protected open space compared to currently 122 acres protected within the current study area. Greenfield neighborhood, this plan is created as a guide for future development, not a development plan. Professional engineers and planners from MSA have developed preliminary hydraulic and environmental assessments to locate future land uses and stormwater facilities. Appendix C has greater detail that's not presented in the base document. We worked with staff on engineering and planning to work through that process to evaluate what we presented. Plan does not propose curb and gutter and sidewalks or sanitary sewer for much of the existing neighborhood. Current practice is to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, and sewer where necessary due to new developments, safety, stormwater, and sanitary issues. Number 3, sanitary sewer in the existing developed area is proposed only where necessary to serve new development on the west side of the neighborhood. And then the 4th one is housing strategy 1.3, I also noted, was added to establish that mitigation techniques for new development adjacent to the established neighborhood. I will note that the petition stated, I believe 2 stories is the request, but noting even the zoning that's allowed in the established neighborhood actually allows up to 3 stories and 35 feet. So we're matching that exact same requirement for that buffer zone. Path connections are still shown to both East Hill and West Hill Drive, but noting that it may not go to both. It will require when development happens of which one may connect. Old Indian Trail is the only street connection proposed between Irish Lane and Burn Road. So there was interest in not seeing any connection to the established neighborhood. I have additional notes about how this is even by far still a greater separation of primary roads within an established area. And so not only for that's where the sanitary sewer is running, but also just have some connectivity east-west from between Burn and Irish Lane, which is over, I think I noted in here, a mile between those 2 streets. No further changes were made to the preferred concept. I went through the process of how over the time the density has been brought down And so we've worked with what we've heard to reduce that and felt that there's a certain level of density in the right locations, if designed properly, is beneficial. We know lower density residential costs are much higher than those with greater densities. So while the initial cost is passed to those new homes, long-term maintenance of streets and utilities is carried by the residents of the city once it's dedicated to the city. Agricultural property owners are free to preserve existing ag lands. Nothing in this plan requires development to happen. It's really setting a scenario of how can it be compatible if someone were to choose to develop or sell. And I guess I understand. So that was the presentation. I think we're going to do the public hearing for this one. Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Deanna, do you want to add anything to this?
Go ahead.
No? Okay. So now I will open the public hearing of the Greenfield Neighborhood Plan. So I have a couple of people that are registered to speak. So I'm going to be calling you to the microphone. You have 3 minutes, okay? First, I will call Elizabeth Thompson. She's online. Chad?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was a part of the Greenfield Steering Committee, and one of my remaining concerns is the business about how septic and water mains will be funded along Irish Lane. When you look at the CIP, there's a little bit different narrative that's going on as far as the timetable. If you look at the CIP, everything seems to happen by 2029. And that causes a lot of people quite a bit of anxiety that live along there. They don't have time to save up money just to do the renovations that they would need to do just to get from their house to the street. And on top of that, there's the special assessment formula. I just think that, when you're talking about potentially $30,000 to $50,000 per household, that seems like we're putting a lot of pressure on the residents along that road to pay for future development. And I understand that, of course, there are people that are advocating for everything to be done when Irish Lane is reconstructed. And my response to that is, perhaps then we need to put in more money from the city so that the residents are not being charged $30,000 to $50,000, but the $2 million that was dedicated towards potential bike lanes could be put towards that and just reduce the overall expense to those people. I don't think it's equitable or inclusive or any of these more utopian values in Fitchburg that we're trying to cultivate right now, to place so much of a financial burden on those people along Irish Lane. And I hope that in the next few weeks, that Public Works and Planning sit down together and really find out what the cost will be per household, because now Public Works has its numbers. And then also looking at the feasibility about doing everything at once. You have the septic interceptor and the Irish Lane construction and the well being, and it's all being done at once within just a couple of years. I don't think it's practical. So I think we need to sort of take a step back on the infrastructure part, and let's do what makes sense, and let's do what makes what is humane for the people that live along Irish Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So next I will call John Rice. Oh, he's only registered to make comments in opposition of this. And also the same Sue Moran, she's only registered in opposition. So now I will call Amy Schultz. She wishes to speak in opposition. Is it for you? Yes.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes.
Okay. So I just want to tell you a brief story about democracy in Fitchburg. A few years ago, there was a developer who bought the tree nursery next to us on Sain Road, and he hoped to turn it into a small development of, say, 6 to 12 homes. At that time, all the property owners surrounding this area were struggling to keep our basements dry because the water table was so high, and the water didn't drain well from our neighborhood. So I asked neighbors to sign a petition to oppose the developer's plan because we knew that more rooftops and paving would lead to, less ability to percolate the rainwater and high water table that we were trying to manage. The City Council heard our concerns and respectfully denied the developer's proposal. Since that time, it seems that our mayor, city council, and the planning commission and staff have decided that they want to develop the Greenfield neighborhood because there is such a housing shortage in Dane County and that there's a railroad line that abuts our neighborhood. There's also with this budget shortfall in Fitchburg needs to be remedied. I've attended some of the meetings regarding the city's development plans. On July 31st of last summer, there were over 100 of my neighbors who attended the Greenfield Neighborhood Plan open house and community survey. The experience of this meeting was frustrating at best because it felt very manipulative in that it was to start at 5:30. The consultant had the plans laid out with stickers that we could all place and have a little bit of feedback on. And then we were given a long presentation, and it wasn't until almost 2 hours later when our feedback was elicited. You can imagine that a large proportion of the attendees had to leave to prepare dinner for families and didn't get a chance to speak out against the plan. And those that did speak expressed well their concerns about the lack of management of the water problems in our neighborhood. And the desire to keep the rural feel of the area, and the concern that the cost of paying for new sewer and other infrastructure would be unaffordable. The city planners worked with the consultant and came back with a modified plan, but our government representatives still have the audacity to heap praise on the work of the consultant and to ignore the voices of those that will be directly impacted. While I appreciate the need to build affordable housing, I don't feel that the way this is being proposed is genuine or respectful. For example, when I recently attended a meeting in Fitchburg, I heard one of the representatives that was saying that more development would help to pay for our budget shortfall. And one of the city planners acknowledged that there wasn't any plan for the railroad to improve transportation for the population in this neighborhood, which was originally a reason for building in our neighborhood. Indeed, when I asked about the recourse regarding the sewer line proposed to go down my driveway, the planner said the city does have the legal authority to use eminent domain, which condemns the property, to acquire private property for public use. This legal authority exists whether or not a plan is adopted for the area, and nothing in the plan could override that legal authority. This last May, as the previous speaker just said, that the residents, the consultant, well, all right, basically everybody was the planning commission or the steering committee voted in favor of the plan 5-2.
You'll have to wrap up, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So anyway, I'm concerned about my neighbors having to pay exorbitant amounts for the new sewer. So I'm just asking the city council and the planning commission to vote against this and to think about maybe other areas in Fitchburg that are better suited for development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next,
That's Mark Jones.
Amy Steger. She wishes to speak in opposition.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Amy Steger. I live on Irish Lane in Fitchburg. For over 1.5 years, residents of Greenfield have opposed plans for the development of our neighborhood. We all have a variety of motivations for opposition, but for me, it's always been rooted in the cost of infrastructure installation at resident expense. I work for a clean water utility. I understand how wastewater infrastructure works and its impacts. And installing new service lines in established neighborhoods generally comes at a significant cost to residents with septic systems. As part of this plan, about 50 homes currently on septic must convert to municipal sewer. Each home conversion, sewer connection, and septic decommission will likely cost the average homeowner about $30,000 to $50,000, as Elizabeth said. Sometimes more or less due to lateral length or due to the nature of improvements on the property, like driveways, etc. This means about 50 residents will be required to bankroll the development of our neighborhood at a total cost of about $1.5 to $2.5 million to our individual 50-ish families. It's all for development we don't want for our neighborhood or for our city. In addition, I worry that taxpayers will pay more to convey wastewater than current plans estimate. It is not clear to me if a pumping station might be required or if pipes will need to be buried very deep below the surface to ensure conveyance by gravity. Both approaches are expensive and can disrupt sensitive environmental areas and springs, as we see in our neighborhood. I ask you to find the level of funding required to pay for the infrastructure and money to support residents with city-funded grants before approving this plan. If not, please reject the adoption of the Greenfield Neighborhood Plan. It's irresponsible to push forward development without considering the financial implications to its current residents. I'll add that I'm not anti-change and I'm not anti-development when development can be done in a smart way. Build up, not out, right? But I am anti-inequity, which this plan embodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Barbara Smith. She wishes to speak in opposition.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been in the neighborhood for many years, and in fact, I live right on the corner of Old Indian and Cyene where you guys want to come through. I am very sad about the fact that when years ago we asked for help with the water situation, we were told absolutely no. Now you guys want to come down my road right past my house and go through someone's acreage that they are raising horses on. I walk Cyene, Byrne, Kane, and Irish every day. There is only a half a mile from my house to Byrne Road. I do not see the necessity for going past my house into a well-established neighborhood to try and put another road in. It does not seem like that half a mile should make that big of a difference. We have a well-established neighborhood where families can walk the roads, kids can ride their bikes, people can walk their dogs, and it's calm, and it's peaceful, and it's the kind of neighborhood everyone wants to be involved in, where you know your neighbor and your neighbor knows you. I think some of the areas that Fitchburg has already started to do the high density are, in my way of thinking, very badly done. We have houses, it seems like 6 inches apart, and no one has property, and you have people over, there's no place for anybody to park. It seems a travesty. And I don't know if any of you people live in these areas that they're thinking about developing, but I think you should walk my neighborhood. It's a lovely neighborhood. And we really don't want your sewer help or whatever. Every house in my neighborhood has a mound system. We don't need it. It's not an improvement to us to have you do that. I'm very much opposed to this. You're coming in to destroy something that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, I will call Patrick Cheney.
In my opinion, this is not quite ready for final approval. There's two main unanswered questions as I see it. One is the new added rail crossing for Collector A, and the other is a new Highway 14 interchange. Both seem to be left as need further study. couldn't or shouldn't the consultant have checked into this to see if this is a possibility, a tentative maybe, or if it's a hard no, more design work or lobbying the Rail Commission or DOT would be needed? I point to past precedent where West Clayton rail crossing had to be closed in favor of opening up one on Central Park Place. Half of the McCoy interchange had to be closed in order to have what I like to call the North Lacey interchange. In my view, it seemed that much time was spent at the beginning of this whole meeting series asking the existing neighborhood a question repeatedly of how much high density can we design into here? With the residents giving a consistent answer of none, go away. Wasting a lot of meeting time until this finally started to sink in and respect the existing neighborhood. Maybe is there a rush now to get it approved? I never thought that Collector A was reasonable, practical, and it looks expensive, and it didn't seem like it acknowledged the private properties, the topology, the steep slopes, wetland, and it seemed like it needed more discussion. And it goes back to that rail crossing question too, which is part of Collector A. So does this need more, or is there more than one version? I am not sure. As far as there's a roundabout being in here, I don't like roundabouts. The smaller they are, the more dangerous they are, because you never know when someone's going to go straight through it or turn right in front of you and go left. So if there is going to be one, it should be large. And I question, you sure it doesn't conflict with the solar field? In general, for master plans, there probably should be more review of prior adjoining master plans, and there should be an overlap zone outwards of future plan areas rather than a hard stop of plan design at the borderline of each master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, I will call Mark Jones. He wishes to speak in opposition.
Thank you. Mark Jones, 2266 South Saline Road, City of Fitchburg. I've been involved in Fitchburg government for over 45 years. Sat on the council, sat on many committees. I can't support the Greenfield plan. I think there's plenty of area we can grow in the existing, in the existing area that's developed, we can redevelop and accommodate some of the growth that is needed without the urban sprawl. And our planning department has called it something other than urban sprawl, but it's urban sprawl. That's just all it is. I think the Greenfield plan was a bad plan. I think it was poorly planned. The steering committee was given a chance to approve what was already presented to them. They did not steer the committee anywhere. And most steering committees, that's their job, is to steer the committee. They were given the opportunity to approve what was presented to them. And that's really a kind of a scam. So I cannot support the plan. I think the agricultural community, we are a unique community where we have agricultural land that we tout as a great thing. And I don't think that we need to develop the agricultural land and take it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I don't have more people to speak. Anyone wants to speak? No? Because I need to close the public hearing. And when I close it, okay, I am closing the public hearing. So now I will ask question to, if the commissioner wants to have any question for the consultant. This is your opportunity. So I want to clarify something about the Irish Lane that Elizabeth made a comment. There are a couple of things that we need to clarify that they are confusing. Irish Lane, the road reconstruction will happen in 2029, and the city decided at that time that it will be economically feasible to install the sewer, okay? So we don't have to do the reconstruction, and then when eventually the development happen in that area, we had to install the sewer. We need to, rip off that road again because we need to put out the sewer. So this is why we're doing that. In order for the people to be connected, the sign interceptor has to be extended. It's only going to happen if, according to your map, can you put a map? Phase 1 happen. If the development start happening in phase 1, in that area 1, then is when the sign road interceptor is going to be extended. So we don't know when it's going to happen, to be honest. It never can happen because people decided, the landowners of that area decided that you will never sell the land to developers, so development is not coming. So if the development is not coming because there is no land available for development, that interceptor is not going to be extended and it's not going to be connected, okay? The other thing that the city is doing, I agree with some of the comments that Elizabeth is making, is that the city has to find solutions on how we are going to help the resident if in the future you need to be connected to the sewer. Because if we are pushing this, is the city pushing this, we need to also look for solutions. I agree on that. We need to look for grants, or we need to include that, the value, the cost of the connectivity to the project cost when we do the extension of the sewer. You know what I mean? The interceptor. So I believe in that. I agree with Elizabeth that this is something that $30,000, $40,000 is too much. I will be very infuriated if I have to do that. So I think the city is very intentional to look for solution on how to mitigate the cost on all of you, that they need to be connected. And I am very intentional on that because it's not fair on you guys. The other thing about, Elizabeth mentioned about the bike lanes, that is going to cost $2 million for Irish Lane. That is the bike lanes is going to happen, the $2 million, if we get a grant. Because I don't believe that we need to spend $2 million from our pocket to pay for bike lane in that area, if we don't have a grant, because it's too much money, $2 million. So the city is also looking for a grant to cover the expenses of those bike lanes. It's going to be grant money. It's not going to be debt. It's not going to be taxpayer money. It's going to be a grant. And we are looking at a couple of options for that too. So that one, I want to clarify that so you understand what is the sewer and the interceptor, this. Okay, any question, comment? Yeah, Shelley.
A question for what you said. So are you saying that in the CIP, the extension of sewer on Irish will happen, but the households don't have to pay to connect until the interceptor comes down, which is development in the future? Okay, great. Thank you.
That one. Any other question, comment? No? Gabriela, you have?
Yeah, for the sewer, whenever it is built, is it going to be gravity sewer, or is there going to be a need for a lift station?
Well, so we did preliminary engineering at this point. It started also with this 2000 plan that shows areas that are all in color here on the map should have opportunity to gravity serve. That is our consideration of how this would be served. Again, noting that there's this red dividing line. So anything that's south of the line is not being served by Irish Lane. It would have to be served by Old Indian. So it depends on where the development is. So obviously in the southwest quadrant of this neighborhood has the least potential of development because it's so the furthest from the interceptor. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah.
yes, we looked at it. Generally speaking, ground can be altered, but generally speaking, we looked at how the arrows you're seeing here is how it would flow. Granted, we're showing a continuous network of streets. Those are going to be determined by each landowner or developer. The primary roads we've suggested are those main collectors. So it all depends on the actual developer of how that can work out development by development. But we've shown that it's a plausible scenario.
So, but we don't need a lift station.
From our general preliminary review of this, from what we had both from what the city already done in 2000 and what we reviewed, there is a plausible scenario to serve these areas. But when you do the greater granular development by development, that will determine. So I know I'm leaving a little ambiguity there, but.
Okay. Any other question, comment?
On the map, so I just wanted to talk about the medium density, the orange sections. So that was originally put in as medium high, and then now it's medium.
Part of it was even high at one point. Yes.
Okay, so my question, because like medium, I always feel like the medium density in our zoning code is actually pretty misleading because medium density is actually fairly low density, and for some neighborhoods, for some cities, our medium density is actually low density because you're talking about small lot, single family homes. Like I don't even think you can put townhomes in on our medium density. Can you kind of give a picture of what medium density looks like in our city?
Yes. So the uptown neighborhood with the small lots, the neighborhoods kind of south of Lacey with the duplexes, that would be a medium density. So where you have lots with individual duplexes, that would be medium density. Much of Terra Vesa with those smaller lots, that's going to be edging up even a little higher than medium density. So medium density is a little bit smaller lots than you would normally think in single family, but it's actually, in comparison to our neighbors, a pretty low density neighborhood.
How many units can you?
5 to 9.
5 to 9 units.
Per acre.
Yeah.
So you couldn't. But generally speaking, like, and I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but like a townhome development could not really happen in a medium density.
Not under our medium density.
Okay. That, and I understand the working with the neighborhood to create lower density, to kind of create I understand that need to kind of create the barrier, the buffers, but I do worry about the cost of housing. And people talk, there was a commenter that talked about that the housing is too dense that's built nowadays. And the reason why it's built like that is because there's no market for a single family home on a large lot because no one can afford it. Like no one can afford it. Like those lots in Terra Vesa that many people would not want to live on, that are kind of zero lot line homes or sometimes townhomes, those are going for $400,000.
More.
Oh, more than that now. Okay, so $450,000, $500,000. So if that house was on a lot with property, it would be exorbitantly expensive and unaffordable for most people. So I do worry about not having the ability to put anything like a townhome in that area because I think townhomes they look fairly low density in actual practice and are not super high in terms of the number of people there, but they're really great. They're more affordable. I live in a townhome. I think it's a great way of housing, and so that is the primary concern for me about changing that from medium high to medium. I don't know if there's a potential for it to be either or, medium or medium high, but medium high is like it's not as high I think as people are envisioning. I think it's smaller than people are envisioning. So,
thank you. Any other comment? Shelley?
Well, since Gabrielle has started bringing up the numbers and the size of the lots, I have a question about kind of the procedure to get to the bottom line where I would want to get to. I grew up in a neighborhood where it was single family, but within the single family, within the blocks, we called them flats. I guess they're called twin homes or duplexes now. And you'd have single family homes and then a flat and then a single family. And it was a lovely neighborhood, lovely way of living. And I don't think, right now, when we talk about low density, that's not allowed. It has to be just a single family detached. And I think our zoning code and the comp plan also don't allow for the kind of placement of twin homes within single family land rather than on the outskirts because you don't want the duplexes to affect the single families. I'm very passionate about this issue, as you can tell. So would it be appropriate to put a note, if everybody agrees, that in the single family, it would be allowed to have, we could set a percentage of the area that can be twin homes. And if you even want to make them owner occupied, one part of it owner occupied, because I think a lot of people favor low density single family because they believe it creates a better sense of place than having renters who are going to be more transitional. So I think there are options to get to maintaining still the feel of the neighborhoods as it exists, but to add a little more housing and also housing that would allow people to get into, ownership and because they have a rental income to help them and et cetera, et cetera. But does our zoning code and then the comp plan have to be changed first for these definitions before we do this with the neighborhood plans?
I'll take, first let's start with the comp plan and no, not the comp plan. The comp plan will, under, for example, medium density just says 5 to 9 dwelling units per acre. And so how that gets broken down per the types of units per acre is really not determined by the comp plan. That can just kind of happen as is. So then the next step would be zoning. So under our current traditional zoning, Fitchburg, of course, has 2 zoning codes. We have a medium density, we have our low density residential, and then we also have a medium density residential. The low density residential only does allow the single family. The medium density would allow the duplexes and a mix. And so our long-term intention here with the mayor's support is to redo our comp plan and then redo our zoning ordinance to address that so that we could have those mixed housing types in our zoning ordinance. As I mentioned, we have a separate zoning, we have another zoning, our smart code, which does allow that mix. So if you go into Terra Vista, you see this very easily. You'll see a townhome kind of form across the street from single family, or a mix of that, or even quite a few you'll see actually, it might not totally look like it, but there'll be flats next to a single family. So that was a long-winded.
No, that was really helpful. But I thought the comp plan referred to low density as single family attached. And if in like any of these plans, in the Greenfield plan, we have a lot of single family, so which seems to not allow flats, twin homes, whatever you want to call it. So I'm trying to figure out how would we allow the mix in what is going to be defined as low density.
I think that you can allow that if new development happen, but not in the Greenfield neighborhood where the existing neighborhood, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if it's going to be.
But the new development is still listed as low density. That's my concern.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
You want to say something, Brad?
I was just going to say that as far as this plan goes, with the future land use categories, it would match up with the comp plan. So it's not dictating that the low density would have to be single family. It may be limiting from a developer perspective, having that density and putting duplexes in there, but we generally, in the plan as the future land use, it's a density range and it can be mixed within a development, and we typically would take the average density across the development. So there could even be in a development, let's say it's medium density, there could be, if there's one lot that if it was replicated would be 10 units per acre, but then it's next to one that if replicated could be 4 units per acre. It's kind of the average over the entire development. So.
Okay, I'm looking more at the areas that are designated low density.
Sure.
And the comp plan says low density includes single-family detached dwelling units. That's why I was concerned about the comp plan itself is going to prohibit a neighborhood plan from saying low density can also include a spattering of twin homes and, however we want to do it.
I was thinking about this a little differently. I would have put it in medium. I would have put your mix probably would have fit better in our medium density.
But what I am lobbying to get low density, allowing a mix of some twin homes.
But I think, that one is something that the zoning code had to be changed in order to happen.
Yeah, and we would probably, and we would probably have to open a discussion about that change.
But what we're looking here is only the future land use. We are not looking at zoning. Okay. So for the other, Zach, Stephen, do you have any question, comment? No? Gabriela?
Can you talk a little bit about the agrihood concept? It seems like a really interesting concept and would love to know a little bit more about that.
I'll send you a link.
Sure. So I don't have it in this presentation. I had it in ones that we shared through this process. But again, it's the idea that you're clustering housing. It could be single family, 2-family, 3-4plexes, generally speaking, and they put it in portions of the land that's not being dedicated or preserved for, a lot of times it may just be community gardens, but it could also be a small farm. Obviously, there's other aspects to be considered of understanding what herbicides or other things are being used on that farming land. But it was an option of looking at some areas that are currently being farmed where you could develop a portion of it, but then maintain that as part of the nucleus of that development that generally has trails that connect through it. There's one that's kind of built in Middleton. I will say that generally they end up being higher priced because you're giving up a lot of the land to be farming operation. But again, we're just opening up a door to another option that could be considered an amendment in the comp plan to allow it. If it weren't being agrihood, it was suggesting that low density residential, which matches the surrounding area. So just looking at an option that kind of fits to what the neighbor has been asking for is that heritage of the farming. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I did some research about that because I am intrigued. There are in Arizona, there are plenty in Utah, Montana, North Carolina, it's kind of like a trend, to keep that rural urban area with a farm. Yeah, but I think that some of them, the one that I researched are very costly.
It actually reminds me, the Housing Advisory Committee a couple meetings ago had a presentation from Green Pastures Living, I think it was. It's a newer nonprofit that's specifically dedicated to providing different independent housing options for seniors that want to move into a smaller home, like a small community. Anyway, it's a really interesting organization. I don't know if they have one that's been built yet, but it almost sounds like an agrihood concept. So
okay, any other question, comments from the commission members? No?
I just have one more, just
Okay.
for Deanna, from like just a high level view about the purpose of a neighborhood plan. My understanding is that the purpose of the neighborhood plan is just so that we're ready so that if years down the road, someone sold their land, a developer wants to bring something, that we can assess whether or not it fits into the bigger picture of the area. So this is not a development tool. This is not a plan to develop. It's really just so that we're not plopping a random thing into a neighborhood that in the longer term vision of what it could look like is going to be weird and off-putting, like I've seen in other cities, myself that I've lived in other parts of the country. Is that kind of what we're looking at here? Is that's the purpose of a neighborhood plan? It's not meant to be that this is going to be the way it's going to develop. It's just so that we're not piecemeal creating weird situations in a neighborhood.
Yeah, to avoid future mayors and council to do whatever they want, you know what I mean, without a plan. So this is provide that safety to the resident too.
And the other thing that I would just say about the neighborhood planning process, in comparison to other communities, it's not developer driven, right? It's not a developer knocking on our door saying, I want to develop here, make it happen. This is really working as a community to figure out long term where we want to go. So this is a very important process so that everyone knows a shared future vision. And we're not just deciding we'll go here and go here, but there's a direction that we all know where we're going.
Okay, so there are no questions. So we are gonna close this. I want to say thank you to all the neighbors from the Greenfield that you came today to listen to this presentation. I understand this is very difficult because this is the first time that the city is doing a neighborhood plan with an existing neighborhood. So it's more difficult, and there is I know that change is hard, but this is what Diana explained. This is a future, plan, for when in the future someone decided to start selling the land, the city has a plan of how that area will look like, according to what we see today, That's it. No one is forcing anyone to sell. We don't have any developer, right now saying we want to build there. No. This was a FUDA. It was this plan was in the FUDA in 2009 when we did our first comprehensive plan. So we had the FUDA, and then after a couple of years, we convert the FUDA in neighborhood plan. This is how I see it, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Isn't it? And then the next step, if this is approved by council, is to incorporate this neighborhood plan in the comprehensive plan.
That's exactly right.
That's it. Okay. So thank you. And then now we are going to do the presentation for the South Stony Prairie Neighborhood Plan.
So yeah, transitioning to South Stony Prairie, one of the things I did want to just mention is this had only a few property owners. So one of the key parts I did want to hit on is what we learned in talking to individual landowners. All owners were interested in the...
Can you explain where is this located
Sure.
so people have an idea?
Yep. So it's on the west side, southwest side of the Fitchburg. Lacey Road is on the north end here. Fitch Roner is our western boundary. This is about halfway south to where you would ultimately get to Grandview, so it's halfway that point. And then if you go a couple 40s over to the east, you can see the solar farm here. That would be Seminole Highway to the east, so it's short of that. As notably, you can see part of this is being quarried. And now, more recently, the purple areas are being quarried to the east of there, here. And there is portions of consideration of future quarrying to the south. So this one's unique also compared to the last one that we just looked at, just because the current conditions are changing, right? We're almost looking at the condition of when they drop the earth by 20, 30 feet in some cases. How do you provide development and utilities through this area? And so in talking to the property owners, they all want what's highest best use. So their intentions are for both quarry owners, one step generally is that you got to take it back to ag or natural state when they're done claiming the natural resources. Both these landowners intend to develop at some point in the future. Extraction will continue over the next 5 to 10 years plus with transitioning to development, just noted that. Each portion has a reclamation plan that would take it back to not development, but that was kind of a temporary scenario till having this plan kind of as a baseline for what could potentially be approved. Most of the lands will be extracted, could be down to 40/60, but they could bring back some of that land. So that's why I said 20/30 in some cases, is they extract and then they put back. Woodlands in the Wolf property, which is that reddish color in the center south. There are planted trees back in the 60s to reduce erosion, but potentially this land may be quarried as well in the future. Extraction is unlikely in the southwest and southeast areas, in the orange and the southwest of the green, because there isn't, well, in the southwest, it's because of the natural resources aren't as good rock there. The orange, the landowner didn't have interest in extraction. Also, in both neighborhood plans, but we talked to the school district and noting that the projections have been updated, understanding of this neighborhood. Stoner Prairie Elementary could see capacity issues, but there are strategies already in place to manage that potential capacity issue. Land is being considered by the school district east of the neighborhood, but in our conversations, they also noted there could be interest of elementary or middle school within the neighborhood if there is enough housing population within the development or in the study area. Public feedback, maintain and expand diversity of housing types to accommodate younger families, professionals, and seniors. Increase density with a diverse range of more intensive housing developments closer to Lacey Road. Provide shared use path connections into the neighborhood. Consider traffic concerns with increased use of Lacey Road west of Seminole to Fitrona for more residential. Capture views and appreciate the landscape and connection to natural features. So vision statement for South Stoner will develop as a complete neighborhood that creates diverse and affordable housing options, expands job opportunities, facilitates sustainable design and development practices, and promotes social equity. Same categories we talked about in Greenfield. I'm just going to hit on the goals. Integrate a diversity of housing types to accommodate a variety of lifestyles, age groups, and income levels. There are 4 strategies under that. Mobility, implement safe, convenient, and attractive streets that are accessible for all ages, abilities, and modes of transportation with 4 strategies. Economy, locate employment options near residential areas, supporting the local and regional economy and providing job opportunities with 3 strategies. Quality of life, maintain streetscapes and open spaces that are accessible to all residents for recreation and enhance neighborhood character, and there's 5 strategies listed there. Sustainability, create an economically and environmentally sustainable development pattern protecting existing natural features with 6 strategies. Similar to the Greenfield, we started with bubble diagrams. There are only 2 in this one. Primarily noted by the steering committee was recommending the one you see that's larger on the left side there, with one modification of interest in seeing jobs and more opportunities there. So there isn't any business park in that one. There was suggestion at the time, back in March 2024, to show east of Commerce Park Drive to be business park. However, working with the landowners and working through the process a little bit further with steering committee, you see here some changes. One, we see the collector roads C and D that run north-south was to connect through the developments and potentially down to Grandview Road in the futures of FUDAs. 2, collector A is shown split, so it becomes one way. It's just like Sherrill Parkway. So the idea is creating a character for the neighborhood. Also providing for stormwater management. There is some portions of trees that are in here that could be preserved as well. Then number 3 is along Lacey to the north. That's where you're seeing now actually the business park was shown on the west side of Commerce Park Drive. And again, we're bringing back the idea of that flexibility. So you see additional lands in business park and school, because we had mentioned about the interest of maybe having a school here, was presented south of there. There is, and we'll get to it, ultimately there will be a major earth wall created between the two quarry owners, because by logistics, you're supposed to tie back in to the existing grade at the property line. So if they both do that, they connect like that. So that is something we considered, and that line is actually where, sorry, let's see if there we go, is right through this area. And there is an option maybe that both landowners can come to a even grade. That would make sense, but that couldn't have been worked out in this process. So we are looking at options. That business park would not be ideal if that wall remains, because you need more flatter land for that type of development. So that's partly why you see that flex space there. So if that wall doesn't come down, it's likely going to be high density residential on the west side of Commerce Park there. Another change is the neighborhood mixed use, NMU, with that pinkish red on the southeast corner of Commerce Park and Lacey. This is matching to the comp plan's definition of NMU, meaning mixed use, where it can be your prototypical when you think of mixed use, which is the vertical, where it is like retail on the ground floor or residence above. It could be purely residential. However, currently, as laid out in the comp plan, that's up to decision with Plan Commission if you would allow standalone residential buildings. We recommend that it allows for that flexibility outright, potentially of a mix, looking at the market to determine if it's purely residential, commercial as part of it, and residential in the other, which is horizontal mixed use. And so that's what's outlined in there. Number 4 is not, it's the area in the southwest. So it's down in here. So during this process, the city amended the comp plan to include the medium-high residential density. That wasn't what was available at the time when we started the process. So we did increase some density by changing some of that portion to that medium-high density, which is that tan brown color. From there, it got further revised through conversations, and now you no longer see the school presented in the future land use or the preferred concept. It was suggested maybe it's in the lands west of there, which is outside of the study area. So I jumped to 4 on that one, but I'll go back to number 1. We are now showing Commerce Park Drive officially going through the neighborhood with intentions to go to Grandview Road. Part of that process of why it wasn't originally shown all the way through is, again, this landowner I'm circling had no intention to quarry the land. To the north, there would be quarrying the land, so there could be a grade change of 30, 40, 50 feet. But in conversations with landowners, they felt that it is achievable to grade it back in. So that is why it's presented now as a through street. Number 2, inclusion of additional high-density residential and neighborhood mixed use. So now that neighborhood mixed use was more straight east-west along Lacey. We've graded it almost now along this entire stretch, with higher density brought along Commerce Park Drive to match what would be on the west side of the street. Number 3, adding in additional high-density residential. And part of these changes I should mention is we did some preliminary engineering between the last iteration and this one, and that kind of helped focus a little bit where the areas that are green here are not just open space and park, it's also stormwater management. But in some cases, we were able to consider it to be, it was too expansive, not as much as we needed, and so we brought in more development in this case for like number 3. 4, I just talked on that. 5 was, this is a local street, so this is one of those streets I mentioned that in the future land use map, it's not going to exist. This is showing a character and how it could connect through the concept, but it's not going to be a requirement in the future land use map, but showing how Legends Rock Road to the north could be the access point that brings you over to the business park within the neighborhood. 5 is what I just talked about. 6 is realignment. Ideally, Collector A would maybe go directly east following this, but that would go through the solar farm. Now, at some point in the future, maybe that solar farm isn't there, but at the time of development, there is an option to take that road around the hill and over to Seminole to the south. So there's kind of like reserve that option and have that conversation when development comes forward, if it's a plausibility to go directly east or if it needs to go around the solar farm. Last iteration increased further the NMU because the ponding was able to shrink in the stormwater management plan shown conceptually. Number 2, again, we were able to reduce some of what was needed for stormwater management, and we brought in a second cluster of this NMU from the west. 3, we actually removed a portion where there is this wooded section here to preserve these woodlands, and I mentioned that you could preserve it also within this split of that Collector A. 4, showing potential extension of the trail and how that can connect over. There was some, originally it showed on Collector B, but now we're showing it more of off-road all the way through in this section and then back to Collector B over. And 5, Commerce Park, showing the trail along Commerce Park up to connect to the north. And then 6 is a reversion, removing that trail segment through here that I mentioned. So some of it's more trail related than it was development. Design themes, I mentioned what I circled, that earth wall that could potentially be between those 2 quarries when they're done. So that's impacting what the uses can be. Preference to the earth wall coming down and finding a balance between the landowners of what that height would be to allow for business park. But likely, if that wall doesn't come down, I mentioned, that would be high density residential in that hatch area. Interest from the steering committee through the process and the school district of considering of a school. And I mentioned that originally it was in the neighborhood plan concepts and kind of got pushed out and said, well, this could be where it could go. However, it's not part of the neighborhood plan, but the plan does suggest there's interest in that. It could be a great focal point for the neighborhood. Their criteria matched, one off of the main roads and part of a residential neighborhood walkability. They had interest in it. But it's not a part of the future land use map amendment you would have here for this neighborhood. Park and open space, tailored, unique terrain, noted that could be unique actually, where there is a grade change through this between the quarry land and the land that wouldn't be quarried, or maybe it's mountain biking, maybe you have a sledding hill. It actually could create a unique park there that you might not have elsewhere. And then street connections reserved were that the intention maybe in the future that these roads would continue south, again, relieving some pressure on Fitrona, and Collector A, relieving pressure on Lacey by connecting over to Seminole Highway. So again, this is what the future land use map shows, that it actually has those primary roads we talked about, but the internal streets that we showed in the concept is just showing how there would be how you could get that character, and it kind of goes to the goals and strategies, but it's up to the landowner to come back with what that is outside of the Collector A, B, C, and D, an extension of Commerce Park Drive. Engineering, we did look at 2 intersections. One is to the north, that's Commerce Park and Lacey. Potential roundabout or signal at Lacey and Commerce Park would be warranted at full build out. Further study would determine what the best route is for that signal control. Collector A and Fitrona currently is matched up with Tonto Lane or Trail to the west, but also noting when talking with Carpsey, there is a shown stream to be confirmed if it's navigable. I don't believe it is, but we are noting that that can connection could change depending on the determination with DNR. Commerce Park Drive and collectors A through D should be built as developed when proposed, as noted. Conceptual stormwater management, it's really divided into two here, talking first about what heads west. So again, that earth wall kind of creates that dividing line where everything west of that, well, there's two locations. Everything that's going to be developed within the neighborhood primarily would run over here to the west. And the requirements set there is to have 90% of pre-development infiltration volume, 100% pre-development runoff volume, and retain 80% total suspended solids. There is a portion that would run through a neighborhood that has been preliminary reviewed by the city, but no active plan right now for that development. But they presented this basically greenway between development over to here, and then it would run north. To the west, so this portion, this quarry owner, would go to the east. Now, this actually would go to a closed depression. So again, we did increase some of the standards here with the 100% stay-on that we mentioned in Greenfield would be in case here. And then also volume control for 1, 2, 10, and 100-year and 200-year 24-hour storm will be 10% less than pre-development runoff. So again, typically it's just pre-development volumes. We're adding another 10% on top of that as a baseline. Again, similar case of water looping is of interest, but notably no specific connection out to Fitch-Rona outside of this potential. We show you the line work of what that neighborhood was intended to maybe be outside of the neighborhood. So there would be a connection over to Fitch-Rona to the north outside the neighborhood. And I should note, no need for other water infrastructure, no well, reservoir needed. Sanitary design, you can see that blue line, that is the divide again to the east and west. And so beneficial is each developer, that's kind of a dividing line, so they're not beholden to the other development to have their connection. So the east, I think we'll get there actually. And I should note there's a red dash line, so just like Greenfield, we did look at off-site out of the neighborhood. If it were to develop in the future to the south, they would tie into this network, and they would have to make sure the capacity and the pipe size would allow for that development. So we did include that. We do have some interesting cases of reviewing this. So the east side would go connect to Lacey. Lacey was reconstructed. We're also reserving 30% of the capacity for additional development on the north side of Lacey. So that's only allowing then what's called 0.961 CFS. What we wanted to look at is at the lowest density range of the future land use map we showed you, that would be slightly below the capacity level with that 30% reserve for the north. However, once you go beyond the lowest density range of each of those uses, so low density, if it's 2 to 5, it's at 2, right? If you go to the midpoint, which is what we've generally been looking at through this process, it would be above the capacity, even if you weren't even reserving that 30%. So what does this mean? It means another pipe is needed to allow much higher than the lower density range of preferred land uses, potentially along collector A to the east, might be a potential connection that could provide. So it depends on when development comes through to determine can it be served beyond Lacey Road. On the west side, the connection is either to Fitch-Rona Road or a potential future connection to MMSD from the west. Allowable capacity of Fitch-Rona Road is 0.716 CFS. The lowest density range in the western portion throughout the west would be below the capacity at 9.15. At the midpoint, the peak flow increases to 1.736. That's inclusive of that offsite area. So all that offsite area we talked about actually is only on the western portion. Yes.
Here, in this section.
Sure.
What is the difference to be connected to the MSSD, or you say Fitchburg. What is the difference?
So Fitchburg is existing. It is clay
okay.
pipe. I know
Okay.
they're going to line it.
Okay.
The MMSD one is not yet designed connection.
From
And it
where
would
is
have to
it
come
coming?
through the town.
Oh,
plan.
Okay.
So if development plan for this area comes, and I should also note, there is some evaluation of additional lands that are platted, like the neighborhood to the north that we talked about, that's just outside the neighborhood. We included all that in this calculation, so potentially some of that development comes lower than intended, and then more development can happen. But it's likely that a different connection will be necessary or upsizing Fitchburg Road to allow it. This is in 4 phases, more about understanding of interest and timeline of operations of the quarrying, that likely the northeast is the first portion to go in. From there, 2B actually can connect to the north, so 2B could be plausible. Alternatively, it may be 2A, connected from the northern development that is outside the neighborhood. So if this were to develop, because that is likely maybe the first development, but it's not in the neighborhood, right? So that's not part of the phasing. So that's why this could go earlier as well. But the intentions are not for the landowner to want to do this before this development. They own all this. And so that kind of leaves the centerpiece area of 3 in the future. And that's the end of the presentation on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will open the public hearing. Anyone here for this matter? Nope. So I am closing the public hearing. So now I open the question to the commissioners. Yes, go ahead.
So this one, because there's no homes around it right now, what is the potential? Obviously, we don't know, but like, could this develop in 5 years once one of the quarries wraps up? Or is this like another one that's like we're looking 20 years down the road?
Theoretically, it could be much sooner if the quarries were to finish soon. So I would say most of the timing on this one would probably be dependent on the quarries finishing. So
okay.
Any other questions? No? This is your opportunity. No? Okay. So I already closed it. Yeah, so we are in commissioner question. Okay. So we don't have more questions. Do you have another one?
No, I was going to ask something about the agenda for moving on.
Okay. So, thank you very much, Brad, Steven, for the presentation, and we'll see you in September. But here, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we are in item, what do you want to do?
Mayor, I was just curious if we could potentially consider doing item I.
I have people from all of them.
Huh?
I have people to speak in all of them.
Well, won't this take like 15 seconds? Aren't we just reapproving the CSM?
For what? Oh.
Yeah,
I mean, do we even need to discuss it? Like, we're just reapproving a CSM that we approved a year ago, right?
Is she here? Is she online?
She's online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we need public comment. Like, I just thought we could just get it out of the way.
Okay. We can do it, but we have people in every item.
Oh, I know. I hope
Okay.
this would take like 15 seconds.
Fine.
I'll move to move resolution R-11025 to now on the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor of moving resolution R-110-25 up to in the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. So, so I need a motion.
I'll move approval of resolution R-11025. Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
Reapproving certified survey map request CS 254324, resolution R-11824 by Aisha Laquat, agent for Hupo Holdings LLC, to obtain certified survey map approval for the purpose of consolidating 2 existing lots into 1 buildable lot on property associated with 2735 Rimrock Road, Olive Tree Condos.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, what is this? Yeah.
This is just, as Gabriela noted, is a reapproval of the CSM approved last May. The reason that we need to come forward with a reapproval is that we just kind of ran out of our timeline. State law requires CSM to be recorded within 12 months after its final approval. The final approval was at the end of May by council, and so we've actually have nearly all of the conditions already met, and we just need just probably a week or two to just wrap everything up. So we're just asking for a reapproval under a different resolution number.
Okay, and the developer Akisha Lacroix is online. So any other question? Yeah, do you want to say something, Aisha?
No question and no comments,
Okay.
just requesting reapproval.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any question, comments? Here none. All those in favor of resolution R-110-25, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. So next we are
Thank you,
going
Paul.
Thank you, Aisha. Next we are moving to 5C. This is a public hearing and consideration of rezone RZ-2597-25, request by Lisa Kruger, agent from Tim O'Brien, to rezone property from RR, that is a rural residential, to the PDD-CIP Plant Development District General Implementation Plan to allow for a proposed multifamily residential development on a property associated with 2747 South Seminole Highway. Okay, so I will open the public hearing for this. We have a couple of people, I don't know if they want to speak. Their developers are here. Brett Newcomb, Duane Johnson, Gus Newcomb, and we have one person registered in support. Do you want to? No?
We also have Wade.
Oh, who?
He's,
Wade. Oh,
he's
sorry,
the
Wade.
surveyor.
Okay.
Online.
Okay. Anything that you need to share with us?
I think we're fine as far as sharing, unless there are comments or questions from you guys.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and then I will go to the staff report.
So this is, okay. The property currently is described as Lot 2 of CSM 8023. The northern portion of the property is zoned business general and the southern portion is zoned rural residential. In 2024, Plan Commission approved a minor comp plan amendment to change a portion of Lot 2 from business to high-density residential. So that was our fall minor comp plan amendment that was approved to change to high-density residential. The northern portion of the property remains undeveloped. Plan Commission has approved a pickleball facility at that northwest portion, and then that approval also included a certified survey map of three parcels and to rezone the northern parcel to business general. The pickleball development is not proceeding at this time. The applicants intend to market this parcel for commercial development. The second parcel to the northeast is expected to be developed as mixed use with apartments over the first floor. This proposed development is not included in this rezone request. It's only for that southern portion of Lot 2 of CSM 8023. The proposal, the Plan Development District General Implementation Plan, would include approximately 300 multifamily units in 5 different buildings, with approximately 3% of the total units in 3-bedroom, and then approximately 26% of the units in 2-bedroom, the remainder as 1-bedroom or studio. Parking would be provided underground and also on the surface. Their proposal includes approximately 1 underground parking space per unit, which is kind of our standard expectation. The property would be accessible through 2 driveways on South Seminole, and to engage with the public frontage, the plans do include walkways from the individual first floor units out towards the sidewalk, the multi-use path on South Seminole. The site plan includes 2 community spaces, a central pool area, and then the southernmost building, Building A, has a patio and fire pit space. A new certified survey map is proposed, but not included as part of this application. That new certified survey map would create 4 lots. So the proposal is consistent with the pre-application that was reviewed by Plan Commission last April. At that time, the applicants noted that they held a neighborhood meeting on September 30th, 2024, in conjunction with the application for the minor comp plan amendment. No additional neighborhood meetings have been held to this date, but the applicants indicated in their response to feedback that they would be happy to update the neighborhood. Staff suggested incorporating some existing barn material into the architecture in a way to highlight the property's heritage. The applicants noted that they would be considering this as a possibility. The application material, upon staff request, included a more readable landscape plan and some revisions to the lighting plan in response to the staff comments. All light fixtures are fully shielded, but staff does note that the Wisconsin Admin Code requires a minimum of 3-foot candles at the pool surface, the pool water surface, and that does exceed our allowable outdoor lighting of 1.5-foot candles for general parking and pedestrian areas. So in this case, state law will supersede the city's requirements for outdoor lighting. For Plan Commission's reference, the applicants included a traffic analysis dated September 13, 2024. The full build-out of mixed-use development with, at the time, this traffic analysis included 400 multifamily units and retail, and there was not expected to be any significant delays or queuing issues with the new development. Applicants are proposing that the multifamily development would proceed in 2 phases, with phase 1 including Building A to the southernmost building, and then the developer is anticipating that they would start construction in 2026, quarter 1, with completion in spring 27 of that phase 1, which would be Building A. Phase 2 includes 1 or maybe all of buildings B, C, and D, with a timing to be determined. Staff does recommend approval with those 7 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions? We need to have questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'll help you out. I have a question.
I have questions too.
At some point when you came, we had talked about the 3 stories versus 4 stories, and you had said that you would consider doing 3 stories on Seminole, in deference to the housing across the street. And now I see you're up to 4 stories, and I think last time when you came here, you anticipated you were going to go 4 stories for all the buildings, but we were assured that it would be setbacks and steps, and everything was going to look so rustic, and it would just kind of fit into the landscape. And quite frankly, I think it's just a big blob of a building that's now 4 stories. That is not what you said you were going to do initially.
Yeah, I guess since the last plan, since the last submittal, the plans actually haven't changed that much. It's still the same floor plan of a building. The 2, the north and south versions of that building, the 2 bigger parts, those are 4 stories. The part in the middle is actually a community room that's only 1 story. It's got a grass roof on it. It's going to look great, and it's going to offer some of that breathability through there. And like I highlighted last time, I think it really comes down to we're trying to provide a very high quality development, high quality materials, high quality design, and that's something that's somewhat rare in today's times. And developers are constrained by cost, interest rates, and in some cases the market. And one of the ways we find that we can do that is by adding density versus cutting back on costs. So
I think it's too worth noting that during the comp plan, we had showed a schematic for the site plan with the 3-story, and that had a total of 329 units for this lot, and now we're at 304. So like the economics kind of called for them to be 4-story buildings. We're still under the overall unit count that was originally showed in that comp plan schematic.
My concern is more how it presents, and when we were, for the comp plan, you said 3 stories, and that was actually one of my questions, and if that would appease the neighborhood who was quite opposed to this. And you had said, you decided you were going to do 3 stories on Seminole. And I acknowledged last time you came in, you had 4 stories, but we were assured that when we saw how the site fits and everything, it's going to flow, and you won't even know from the east side of Seminole that this is 4 stories, and I don't think that's what we have before us now.
Gabriela.
I remember that public hearing quite extensively, and my recollection is that a lot of the people that were there opposing it did not actually live in the neighborhood across the street. They lived in Fitchburg, but weren't actually across the street in that, what is that called there? Crescent Crossing?
Crescent Crossing.
Crescent Crossing.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just something that popped into my mind. But, yeah.
Okay. So, how many units are in the building, in phase 1, I'm going to call?
88 units.
Okay. And they are going to be, how many are going to be 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom?
I don't believe we've come out with that unless you have it.
Yeah, there is a table within the letter of intent.
Oh, they are in the,
yeah.
Okay.
So for each building, we do know our
Okay.
amount of studio, 1 bed, 2 bed, 3 bedroom. So that's all summarized
Okay.
on, I believe, the second page of the letter of intent in a table.
And I have another question because, Diana, you mentioned that there's going to be another CSM to split 4 lots.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I'll let Gus explain why we're going from 3 to 4 lots on a future CSM.
Do you have an explanation?
So I think it's really the lot that these buildings that we're asking for the GIP for want to be divided into 2 separate lots, which creates the 4 total lots. And that was
But they're going to be different owners? This is what you're doing this?
No, I think it's just for future flexibility. And
what do you mean flexibility for what?
It could be financing. It could be the ability to phase these in under one roof instead of raising money for the project through outside investors.
So you're creating like a different LLC for each building, so when you can attract different private investor, something like that.
It may offer us flexibility to not have to do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And when are you anticipating to continue with phase 2? Or?
I think it's highly dependent on the market. That's the number one answer. But ideally, we'd like to be tracking about 1 year after phase 1 starts.
But you're not planning to build the amenities in the meantime. So only when you build phase 2 or 3.
Much of the amenities, that's true, but we do have a lot of amenities as part of phase 1, just not the swimming pool, of course.
Okay, that's fine. I want to. Any other question, comment? Okay, Zach, Steven, any questions? Gabriela, do you have another one?
What is Deanna, can you just remind me what the next future steps are for this?
I certainly can, though not required to bring forward a new CSM. We do need to get a CSM for the different lots and get that recorded. And a subdivision improvement agreement is also in our future. And for our plan commission, we will, next step after a plan development district general implementation plan is to bring forward the PDD specific implementation plan. So that's the second step of our PDD process. And then before we can get to building permits, we'll have to have an architectural design review for each one of those buildings too.
Have you purchased the land, or is it still an option?
We are under contract currently
Okay.
until we are extending that out to late summer at this moment. Yeah.
Any other question? No?
Thanks for bringing this project. We really need more housing. And I
course.
know that I work for Habitat for Humanity, so we're a very small developer comparatively.
Sure.
But
Thanks for
financing
accepting it.
is hard. So
Appreciate that.
I can't
Thank you.
imagine what it is for you all. So
Thank you.
excited that we can bring this in.
Question, comments? Okay, so I need a motion.
I'll move approval of rezone RZ 259725 with the, 7 conditions outlined by staff.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the rezone, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we move to item 5D. Okay, this one we have it. Do we have 5D people here? 5D?
No.
Okay. 5D is another public hearing and consideration of conditional use CU-2595-25 requested by Jeremy Williams, agent from Justin Bondra V6 LLC, to allow conditional use for a horticultural specialties and landscape sales and service on property associated with 1839 County Highway MM. So, okay. So I will open the public hearing. Where is Jeremy? He's online.
No longer.
No? Okay. I am closing the public hearing. Okay, so what is this?
Okay. This is out at Fitchburg Farms, down at 14 and MM. This is a request for a conditional use permit that would allow Maplewood Tree Care to operate their business on this property. Their business is, does tree services, and so what they wish to do on this property is to store wood, store logs, store mulch piles, process wood as part of their tree care business. So the conditional use permit is for horticultural specialties and then also landscape sales and services. Based on the aerial photographs from 2024, this business has been in operation for several months at this site. Their operations came to staff's attention when the applicant requested water service at this location. So at that point, staff informed the applicant that they would need a conditional use permit to proceed to operate on site. If the conditional use permit is approved, the use of that northeast, and I apologize, I wrote northwest. At that first line under staff evaluation, I have been corrected. It's the northeast. And Scott, you want to give me
a map? No?
Yeah. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
So we're at the northeast portion of the site. So they're requesting to store wood, process wood, some mulch piles on this northeast corner. They also intend to grow some trees, and then they would look to operate for storage out of this green roof building also. Staff did receive a call from the property owners to the north expressing their concerns about the mulch piles and the wood processing, that that it's incompatible with the agricultural uses to the north. And so staff had also included some photographs just for your reference of kind of what this looks like up on the top of the hill in terms of their activities. So the other thing that I just will mention, there's farmland to the north. That's where I received a call with some concerns. And then to the east, there is a mix of some business highway zoning and residential zoning. So it's kind of a mix of residential and also commercial uses to the east. And so to address some of those concerns, staff suggested creating a buffer zone between Maplewoods activities and the neighboring properties, 100 to the north, 100-foot buffer zone to the north, and then 50-foot buffer zone to the east. The other main point here that I wanted to bring up, and we had quite a bit of discussion too in Ag and Rural, is that there was a conditional use permit that was issued by Plan Commission in 2017 for a landscape company to operate out of this green roofed building. And at that time, it was made very clear to the applicants and the property owners that this building could only be used for storage of equipment and materials. It could not be used as an occupied building. The reason that is because the building is not constructed and designed for humans to occupy it. It's just basically a shed. And this has been kind of a long-running issue that the building inspector has had with this property. And so one of the staff recommended conditions was that this building would only be used for the storage of equipment, and if occupancy is requested, then it must be, the building must be brought to commercial standards. A new building permit would be needed. The building inspector would also require Dane County to approve the private sanitary system, and then proper egress and exit lighting and ADA requirements. The other major discussion that we had too in Ag and Rural, not trying to steal your thunder, was about burning. The applicant does burn wood that is not usable for other uses. The fire department is aware of that, and the fire department has made it very clear that the applicant needs to have a permit to burn. This is quite a concern for the neighbors to the north. But it is possible for a landowner to burn on their property. They do need to have a permit from the fire chief. So there was a whole lot in there. I think, and the gist of it is, Ag and Rural had several changes to, they passed several changes to the conditions, which I can walk through, but I'm going to let Shelley jump in and
okay.
There was a lot.
Okay. It related to the buffer zones, and I think the consensus ultimately, with one objection from a committee member, was that a 50-foot buffer zone to the north was also acceptable. Didn't have to be 100, so it'd be 50 all the way along. And that actually is more in line with how he's now using it. But that because everything to the north of there is really just cropland. It's not like there's a home right there or anything. And then there's a whole line of trees and brush and everything. So they thought 50 feet was an adequate buffer to the north, and so this CU was amended to include that, and that passed. And then only one other minor addition on the right now our conditions, number 3 refers to in that buffer zone, he cannot have any wood storage or mulch piles. And we added or do wood processing there because he does do not chipping, but splitting logs or something there. So, and it was just those 2, right, Deanna?
I got a couple more in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they also, what would happen in the buffer zone would have to be mown grass or crops, and then there was a request to include number 4, machinery and equipment exclusively. So just clarifying that that building can only be used for the storage of machinery and equipment exclusively. And no wood. We didn't even get to that point. This was over an hour, so I don't know.
Do you know how much of this mulch is storing outdoor? Because we are having some concern and complaint from people from our mulch here, because it smells a lot in summer. So, so I don't know. You know how much is? You know what I mean? Like.
I know that he has a fairly big pile right now. We didn't have a discussion about the smell. I haven't had any complaints about this.
No, but he was saying that he's trying to figure out who to give a lot of that mulch to.
Really?
So, yeah.
So what does he do? He's not mulching to sell this? He's not selling this? What is he doing with this?
I don't think he's very clear about where it's going right now. I think he's looking at options and trying to work with maybe someone who would work on composting it.
He doesn't have like
I don't think he sells it himself. I think he has the mulch pile only because he has to do something with all the wood that he brings back from his tree service. And so he chips it, mulches it, just.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, okay. He can donate it to all municipality for mulch, you know what I mean? Okay, I get it. Okay, so any comments? Thank you, Diana.
Can you just reiterate, Deanna, staff is okay with this, with the conditions?
Yeah, there was, like I said, Egg and World did make some amendments to those conditions, but yeah.
But my question is, if you have this neighbor complaining already, why we don't keep the 100 feet to the north buffer?
My sense was mostly what the neighbors were concerned about was smoldering fire. So I think another 50 feet of a buffer wasn't probably going to matter that much. And the committee just felt, 50 was reasonable because I don't know how far back the crop goes before there's even a house there.
Yeah.
So it was far enough away, they just felt 100 feet was more than necessary as a buffer. Because it's mostly the smoldering fire that the landowners were upset about.
What would the 100 feet, can you help me see what that would mean?
I can show you exactly what that would mean. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to get right at 100, so you'll have to bear with me, but.
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah, so.
And what that.
And he thinks that would be burdensome to have 50 more feet.
He's
currently operating within that 100 feet.
He
does not think it's burdensome to leave the 50 feet.
Okay, so the 50 feet would be within what he's already doing.
He thinks it's manageable that way.
And then to the east, you have that building there and a house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that one is 50, is that?
Yeah, we're at 50. It's kind of hard to see.
Okay.
But I guess we're probably
Did that neighbor complaint about this or no?
No, I only had one call just from the neighbors to the north.
Okay.
And as you all know, with a conditional use permit, we notify all the property owners within 300 feet of the property. So I did not have any other calls or concerns from another property owner.
And how do we make sure that number 3 is in compliance?
That's a really good question. And it's probably going to be kind of like how a lot of things we do. If there's a complaint, we'll go out and or they call the fire department and we notice that there's a problem. I will say that the applicant really does want to try to be a good neighbor. Would you agree, Shelley? I don't think he's trying to cause problems, but obviously he has a very thriving business right now.
Okay.
And we don't need to mention the other property line?
No, it's 50-50, isn't it?
But there's only there's more than 2 directions.
So I mentioned the north property line I mentioned the north property line and the east property line, and so their intention, and per at least how I tried to write on the conditions, they need to operate within the area denoted on the plans.
So they're never, okay.
So they are not supposed to be operating outside of the area denoted on the plans submitted as the application. It's my understanding that the applicant is only leasing 3 to 5 acres here. They're not leasing the entire the entire site. So it's 40-some acres out here.
Okay, so I need a motion.
Well, I guess just for everyone's clarity, there is some changes that Aiken Rural passed. So I guess if you're comfortable, you can either go with staff's recommendation or I think it makes sense. I think their clarifications are more than reasonable. Shelley just wanted to make sure we added in wood processing, changing from 100 to 50 feet on the north property line, a clarification what that buffer would look like in terms of mown grass or crops so it just doesn't get full of weeds and weed trees.
Which he does already.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the building can only be used for the storage of machinery and equipment exclusively.
Okay. I move approval of conditional use CU 2595-25 with the 7 conditions by staff, but as amended by Ag and Rural Affairs.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the conditional use with the as amended with the staff recommendation plus the amendments from Ag and Rural Affairs, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we move to 5E. It's another public hearing and consideration of conditional use CU-2596-25 request by Mike Rupiper, I don't know, an agent for the Promega Corporation to allow conditional use for the construction and maintenance of the Nevin Spring Boardwalk built on Billings, including limited excavating and filling in wetland on property associated with 5470 Gunfleet Trail. So do we have, how many people we have?
Just
2. We have
Mike.
Matt Kelso, Mike, how do you pronounce your name?
Rupiper.
Rupert, okay. So, what is all this about? You can do do you want to do a presentation or
We
will ask
don't have to.
staff?
Talking to Deanna before the meeting, it sounded like we could just be available for questions
available
after the staff
okay.
presentation. You've had a long meeting already, so.
Okay, so you're
save you a few
available for
minutes of
questions.
time.
Okay.
That's
Thank
wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Promega is proposing a boardwalk. It would be on their property, just to the north to connect to the Capital City Trail, which also has an easement through this property. The boardwalk would be open to the public. The boardwalk is planned to be approximately 720 feet long, 6 feet wide, with also a lookout platform. It would be constructed within the existing wetland, thus the need for our conditional use permit this evening, but not in the map floodplain. The height of the boardwalk is expected to be 1 to 2 feet above the water surface. Lighting is not proposed at the time, and there could be some signage that's being considered but not detailed at this time. Construction is expected to take place in January or March of 26. It will kind of depend on our weather and when the ground is frozen. That's the ideal time to do such construction. It will minimize the impacts to the wetlands and the water quality. That's not expected to be any vegetation to be removed. And any areas disturbed during construction would be stabilized and restored with wetland vegetation. The construction is expected to last 60 to 90 days. The applicants adequately addressed staff comments. The floodplain, one of the comments was that the floodplain needed to be shown on the maps, and you can see up on our screen, the floodplain is shown. And then staff had a question about trash removal, and Promega explained that there would be bi-weekly trash removal and maintenance to remove any trash from the area. And then the fire department did want to ensure that they would have adequate access with their ATV, and which the applicants have clarified. And then the final staff request was to ensure that the apron connecting the boardwalk to the Cap City Trail would be constructed of asphalt to reduce maintenance. So this is pretty straightforward, and staff is recommending approval with the 6 conditions.
Okay, thank you. And thank you from Promega for doing this. I assume that it's going to be open to the public?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any question?
May I ask what the impetus for this was? Why did you decide to do this?
I think that Bill and his friend took a walk out there one day and found a spring and thought it was lovely and thought this would be a nice public amenity to have.
There is a nice spring. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's delightful. Yeah, I think this sounds amazing. So,
if you've ever been to the Pheasant Branch Conservancy and see the springs out there in Middleton, I see this being a lot like that, with 2 nice spots where you can go and see springs and really appreciate the wetlands that are there.
So there is a spring here in
There's
Fitchburg?
2 springs out there.
Really?
It's pretty neat in the winter to see snow everywhere and green in the middle.
Wow.
Interesting.
Cool.
So you're planning to start the construction during winter time, and then it's going to be open by...
I would say summer-ish would be the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think this is a great...
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is delightful.
Yeah. Okay, any other question, comments?
I'll move approval of conditional use CU-2596-25 with the 6 conditions noted by staff.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the public hearing, no, this is the conditional use 2596-25, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carried. Okay, thank you, and thank you very much, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we have our last public hearing and consideration of ordinance 2025-0-10, amending Article 10, floodplain overlay zoning of Chapter 22 zoning ordinance. It sounds so fun, this. Okay.
I don't think there's anyone.
No, okay, I will close the public hearing.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't close the other public.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has updated the flood insurance study for Dane County. As part of this larger process for Dane County, Wisconsin DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, has requested that the city of Fitchburg update our floodplain ordinance that would be in Chapter 22. And there's quite a bit of updates in the actual text of that ordinance, and it's reflecting a requirement that the DNR has that our wording matches the model ordinance. So literally, we had to make sure that our text matches the DNR's model ordinance. There's no significant changes in how we will enforce our floodplain zoning or the different requirements for the different types of floodplains, whether it's a floodway or a flood storage area. But our text, if approved, if this ordinance is approved, will align with the model ordinance required by Wisconsin DNR. I also included in your packet, there was an update of the flood storage areas in Fitchburg. To my eyes, I could not find any major differences between the existing map and this map. This is the new floodplain storage map. The city has had long-term had floodplain storage areas, 2 of them, one down at the Lake Barney area and then one at the far eastern part of the city here. I could not see any major changes whatsoever in the floodplain storage areas, but that was something that I just want to point out our attention. There is no impacts that I'm aware of on any houses or private development. What the floodplain storage areas mean is that any development within that area needs to take special consideration and additional calculations to ensure that there is no impacts to the capability of that area to store floodwaters. We don't want to do development in the flood storage areas. We have no intention of doing that. But so that's what this is before you, is these flood storage areas. So staff is just recommending one small change. I realized it would be a little more clear if we added another division. Right now, our ordinance has 2 divisions, and I'm requesting to add a 3rd division that would just be a division for administration. So other than that, I request approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments about this? Here none.
I'll move approval of ordinance 2025-010.
Can you just say with the 3rd division?
Oh, with the 3rd division.
Thank you.
That's a new one.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the ordinance 2025-0-10, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next, we move to 5G. It's a minor PDD amendment, Irish Fields. It's a request by Greg Held, agent for Fahey Glenn LLC, to obtain a minor PDD modification to allow for the clarification and minor edits of the Irish Fields PDD SIP, a property associated with Lot 271 and former Lot 270, now Lot 1 and 2 of SCM 16786 of the Highfield Reserve Plat. Okay, so do we have? We have Greg Held.
And
he wishes to speak in
you
support.
Did not.
Sorry.
Of course.
I don't need to talk.
And of course, David Fahey.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Greg Held with Knothy and Bruce Architects, and we are just requesting a minor amendment to the PDD. Since this PDD was originally approved, Lot 270 has been divided by a CSM, which was approved and recorded, and now we're just doing a minor revision to get all the zoning text and everything to align. Instead of saying Lot 270 for the densities, it'll say CSM Lot 1, CSM Lot 2. Otherwise, I don't think there's any substantial changes at all since what you've previously approved.
So this was a staff request, just so that we had a final document that was reflective of what is being built out there right now. So as Greg mentioned, I just wanted to make sure that we were very clear in our site development requirements that were showing that new CSM that was approved last month. So,
Okay.
just recommend approval.
Any question, comments?
I'll move approval of the minor PDD amendment for Irish Fields.
Second.
All those in favor of amending the PDD? The minor PDD amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So next we move to 5H. This is a certified survey map ZS-2594-25, request by Ron Class, agent from the Oregon School District, to obtain certified survey map approval to allow the subdivision of an existing lot into a one single-family residential lot and one outlot on property associated with 3016 County Highway MM. Okay, so Ron is online. So, is he still there? Scott? Huh? Okay, Ron, go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a fairly straightforward CSM, and I don't need to go into a lengthy explanation, but very simply, the Oregon schools want to carve off about a 1 acre lot for the house and sell that, and then keep the remaining triangular piece to go with their current school forest lands.
Okay. Thank you. Diana?
Yeah, so Ron gave an excellent overview. There is an existing house. I do not believe that house has been occupied for quite some time, and the school district is creating it's zone low density residential, and so they're creating. We're not doing any rezoning, but we're creating approximately a 1 acre lot. You'll see that the septic system would remain on that lot with the house, and then the remainder is not a buildable lot. It would just remain as part of the school lands that are to the east. So the school owns lands to the east here. The existing driveway access to the parcel is kind of at the property line, and it's shared with the properties to the north. Staff did suggest that a shared driveway access easement should be in place. The city does have a water main on Highway MM. Public Works staff noted that the house would need to connect to municipal water, so the applicants will need to work with Public Works on the timing of that connection and the required approvals. Staff recommends approval of the CSM with actually 9 conditions. I need to add one at the last minute here because, excuse me, Dane County got back to us on their review, and Dane County would like to add one additional note. So I'm requesting approval with 9 conditions. That additional note requested by Dane County would read, no access across the frontage of County MM along Lot 1, except in the area of the existing access location. So what the county is interested in, just having a note that would say no other driveways along Lot 1 other than the one that's already there. So otherwise, I recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you mentioned that they will need to collect the municipal water. What municipal water?
Oh, there is there is a water line that runs along the west side of MM.
Oh, really?
Yep.
But that one belongs to.
Is it a
Oregon.
Fitchburg one?
It's
Yeah.
an Oregon, isn't it?
No,
Yeah, because okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Because here, I can just kind of throw it up here.
Maybe Mike knows this. Mike.
So there's a water line that runs. There is an existing City of Fitchburg water line right here.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. It'll show up here. Maybe a little bit better, right here.
Oh, so when the school open there, they can connect to that one.
When the school.
Yeah, there is the Oregon school own the rest of the lot.
Oh,
and they're planning to
well, I don't think we'll be doing too much building back in here. This is all an environmental corridor.
No, I know, but south.
Yeah, the school is down here. So the school owns this parcel, and then also this parcel, right?
Okay,
here in
so
Terravesa.
okay,
Yep.
but there is water there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
No
What?
sanitary.
Oh, that one is. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, but interesting. Okay, thank you. Any other question, comment? Okay, all those in favor?
I would like,
Yes. Go ahead.
yeah, I would like to comment on the water main.
Okay.
I had replied to staff that the school would prefer to keep the house on the well. And as I read the ordinance, it allows for an exception for such a situation as that if the well is providing good water. So I understand the conditions of approval and accept those, but I would like to just make it noted that I'll work with Public Works to resolve that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think I wrote enough flexibility into condition number 7, coordinate with Public Works regarding connection to municipal water with proper approvals. So no timeline here, just you'll have to coordinate with Public Works.
Thank you, Deanna.
Okay, I need someone to move this.
I'll move approval of resolution R. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. No, I'll move approval of certified survey map CS 259425 with the 8 conditions.
Second.
9 conditions.
9.
Who's second?
Me.
Okay, Steven. Okay. All those in favor of the certified survey map, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ron, for waiting so long.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
No problem.
Okay, so we are at the end of our.
We need one
No,
more.
we
You've
have
you've got one more, and Mr. Cheney has waited.
Oh, yes, okay. So then we are moving to the resolution R-100-25 is adopting the 2026-2023 capital improvement plan. Okay, the proposed. It's proposed. It should be proposed capital improvement plan. Okay. Okay, so we have Patrick Cheney that he wishes to speak. I don't know what. Okay. No comment. He didn't put
As I understand, there's something in the CIP about sanitary sewer line related to the Greenfield master plan of putting a sanitary sewer along Irish Lane, 2029 or so. And I heard some comments from the chair, the mayor, which I think was that when a sewer line is eventually put in there, that I didn't get it all clear, that maybe there'd be grants to help connecting of residences to that at the time. I don't know all the details, but I wanted to just comment that when a sewer line is put in, that the city should be favorable for the residents, the existing houses who have a working septic system and everything, that there be allowance that the residences can keep their septic system and not be forced to connect onto the city sewer right away. There may be times when somebody does want to connect onto a city sewer when their septic system is failing, but with an investment into, these systems that people have that are working, it would be good to allow the residences to maintain and keep those systems going. I will note that I remember discussions in the past that said that the DNR actually says that there is a benefit to private septic systems because whether or not they have their own well or getting city's water, the water, especially if it's from a local well, then the water is used from the local area and it goes into a septic system and it puts the water right back into the ground right in that area, rather than where somebody uses the city sewer system and it's pumped all the way through the pipes and goes all the way over to MMSD and processed, and then it's sent out Badfish Creek and sent way out of the area. It's taking the water from the city aquifer and sending it down the creek elsewhere. So there is benefit to septic systems. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay. So we close. Well,
we didn't do a public hearing on this one, and
But
I
it's-
just
yeah.
provided a list of some of the projects that might be of interest to Plan Commission. Otherwise,
There are
staff
more.
doesn't really have any specific comments here.
So since I put together this, I think I want to mention that practically I didn't add any new amenity or project. The project that in page 52 of the CIP, there are some new projects that they were, put there by staff because of their more infrastructure for growth. But most of the stuff that we did is we look at last year's CIP, we adjusted by inflation, we adjusted our, what is replacement funds. We adjusted the price of some of the big equipment to be sure that we don't have equipment that their value half of the price. So this is what we did. Practically, this is what I am presenting to you. That's it. There's nothing new here. Practically, it's last year with a couple of new projects that were added by staff because there are some road projects. And there was a lot of delay. We moved forward a couple of projects because, because for several things. One is capacity, internal capacity, or because some of the project are being delayed for one reason or another one, because it's we don't have the funds, or we are looking to obtain grants, but primarily it's because of capacity. And some of those big projects that they were delayed, we are recommended by staff. I would say that maybe you can take a look at the first 50 pages of the CIP to have an idea in each department how, what are the projects that they are going to hit 26. We are always looking at the first 5 years because those projects are the ones that they are kind of vetted, you know what I mean? But for me, I look at 2026 because everything that's going to hit 2026 is affect the operational budget by next year. So those one are projects that are already coming, for next year. So that's it. I don't know. There is another thing that I want to mention about the Ficherona Road and adding the bike lanes. If you go and look at the project specifically, that sometimes there is we add some language there explaining, updating the project. And one of the things that I decided to do is, because this one we are going to share in this with I think if the town of Verona, they are not going to add the bike lanes. I think this one is, isn't it?
I'm not certain about that.
We are not going to add the bike lanes, something like that, because otherwise it's not, So, so there is some of them that have some, there are other restrictions. Yeah.
It just occurred to me that because the confusion from the residents, the reasonable confusion about the Irish Lane sewer versus the interceptor, that perhaps it'd be prudent to explain that in the CIP, that the addition of the sewer line is not, the addition of the infrastructure is not actually an extension of the sewer because the interceptor does not yet exist, and that residents would not be required to connect under those circumstances. I actually think it should just say that in the CIP. I can talk to Misty about adding it as
you
a-
can
as
say,
an amendment.
on Monday, I invite everyone to attend the Finance Committee meeting where the head of the department will be presented to the Finance Committee, the CIP for each department. Yes, you can, by my understanding, because is that, until that interceptor is built, because there is a need, on phase one development, no one is going to be asked to connect, even when the sewer is in front of the houses.
Yeah, I want to clarify with Public Works, but it just seems like people do look to the CIP.
Yeah.
And it's a reasonable thing to be confused about. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't know either, so
I did that. I talked to Chad because I received an email from someone asking this question, and I think it was Elizabeth. And then I forward the email and I say, I think I forward to you and say, I am confused here. So this is what they told me.
Is that the same for the water? Will there be, when the
I
water
think there
main's
is water
extended?
already.
There's
So
water on part of it, and
Yeah.
when the water goes, they'll have to connect.
So there will be an assessment for the water?
Yeah, but some people are already connected to the water. This is what they told me.
And that's been in CIP
For a long time. So, yes. Okay, that's it. I don't know, do you want to mention some of that? One of they have, there is a project that 6273 is the neighborhood hub phase 2. This one, is a 90% chance that it will never happen. I moved it there to 2032, but if any common council member want to remove it, I'm fine with me, because the neighborhood, the hub phase 1 is kind of like a small community center, so there's not going to be a need for this in the future.
The fourth one, 6273.
Yeah, so that one is a 90% chance that will never happen. The Northwest Teen Center, I move it to 2728, but also until we don't get we need to find the operational cost for that project. The city currently doesn't have the funding to do that, so we are working with other partners to see if they are going to be able to cover those costs. This one is also, there, but is not sure until we get the funding. But we are still working with partners that they are willing, some of them, they are interested to cover those costs. The Agricultural Museum, I don't know because when I presented to the Rural and Ag Commission, they were no, oh yes, look at that. So it's there, you know what I mean? Because I think it's a great idea to have this is part of our identity, and maybe it should be nice to have a place where we can go and we can look at the past and see from how our agricultural community has grown, or our settlers, and a nice place to and also it could be an attraction for people to come to Fitchburg to visit a museum. But so far, there is not too much traction. The only way that I think this agricultural museum will move forward is we find a group of neighbors that champion this project, a group, and they work on that because we don't have capacity internally at City Hall. Yes, something maybe that I can do when I retire from here. Another project. Okay, and then the Moraine H Park, Gabriela, this is your idea.
Yeah, I added that back in my very first year. This is all just, is it still marching forward? I haven't looked at the year that it's in.
We put it 2034 now.
Yeah, it's always been on the back 5 years because it's just kind of a dream. But
we have a better idea what to do now.
You could be done piecemeal slowly over the development, and if the idea doesn't exist, nothing will ever come of it. So, but that being said, this is subject to amendment by the council. So if anyone has any suggested amendments, either on this commission, other commissions, or the public, please let us know because the council has the opportunity to amend, and I can check the schedule.
And this is the sign interceptor that you see there is the one that is connected to the Hartham property. It's
exactly, and I was going to say we could amend it to clarify that that's not going, because it's confusing, because it's 2020, both 2029.
And the 2029 phase through has property. That one is, I don't think that we need to do that because that one is depend of phase 1 of the Greenfield neighborhood plan.
Yeah, I think we can clarify in both of those projects what that means.
It's confusing.
But anyway, for FYI, there is a special finance meeting. Is it next Monday?
Yes.
Gosh, I cannot believe it's almost the end of June. Okay, finance meeting June 23rd, which is this coming Monday. All the presentations by the departments about the CIP project, which is really interesting. There'll be a public hearing on June 24th at the council meeting then. Then we will have amendments are due, there's a little bit of time, but the amendments are due to the finance director on July 21. So there's some time in between. So if anyone is interested in amending, it cannot be amended from the floor. It can only be amended by a proposal by an alder. So if you have any ideas, please let an alder know prior.
Okay, so we have a resolution on the table. Oh, no, we need to move it. Any other question, comments about this?
I'll move
me too.
approval of resolution R125.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor of resolution R-100-25 say aye.
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 Any opposed? I want to clarify that this is a proposed mayor's capital. This is not the final one. Okay?
But like anything, it's subject to amendment by the council before adoption.
So, yeah. Okay, thank you. Report from department. Ag and Rural Affairs Committee report. Oh, you first. You want to go first?
I don't know. Well, I do have an announcement that we did interviews for Zach's position this morning. We have had a lot of great applicants. So we'll just kind of work our way through the next step and hopefully have someone on board real soon.
Okay.
The intern is being very productive, working on a lot of different projects. She's worked through much of the agricultural project that we've been working on for farmland preservation. So we'll probably be able to bring some more information forward to you in a couple of months on that project. So a lot of really great things happening with the intern. So that's all.
Any, you know what I'm going to ask.
I know you're going to ask about the comp plan. We're doing our best, and certainly as soon as Brad works his way through through the edits, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have all the comments, questions, concerns regarding the two neighborhood plans to staff by July 10th. By July 10th, very important date. And that includes from Plan Commission also, if there's anything, comments, questions, concerns, July 10th. Brad will work over the next month, work through those comments, questions. After he works through that, we're pretty much set up for September, and then the next major project on Brad's task is the comp plan.
Okay, good, okay. Okay, thank you. Any question for Deanna? No? Yeah.
One thing I'll just mention as well, the council just approved funding for a consultant to do an updated housing plan. First time since, 2019?
2019.
Part of that may include kind of some recommendations about zoning changes.
Okay.
So I think that is likely to happen as part of the consultant's work. They've done that before, so that could help inform a zoning update.
And also you are working on some minor zoning changes.
Yep,
Yeah? Okay.
we are going to work through some minor zoning updates too.
Okay.
And so.
Okay, thank you. So, any report from the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee report?
Just in addition to the conditional use, there was a start of a discussion about updating the Farmland Preservation Act, and as it relates to base farms, a very esoteric topic that Deanna is going to make clear for all of the committee members.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Really.
Okay. Transportation and Transit Commission report?
I had to miss the committee meeting and I have not had a chance to review the recording, so I have no update. But there was a meeting last week.
Okay, thank you. So announcement. So we are meeting July, okay, I don't remember. 17? Okay, thank you, Zach. July 17? Okay, we are meeting in July. So, any other announcement? Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 9:27. Sorry, it was a long meeting.